show people Gurkhas. In North America, we might not know what they are. Maybe it sounds like gherkin or something, which is like a pickle. These are an ethnicity of some of the most loyal and fierce fighters in the British Army. And you can see this is actually on a British, and scroll down a little bit. The British Army isn't just multiracial, it is multinational in a way, all the former nations of the empire. If you want to see some very interesting uniforms, Google Sikh military uniform, because of course the Brits were in India for centuries, and the Sikhs were sort of a battle class, warlike, and they gravitated towards the military historically. And of course, as you may know, Sikhs wear turbans on their heads, so how do you square that? Well, that becomes part of the uniform. And so that's why I am, in North America, in Canada in particular, when there is resistance to a Sikh turban in a military uniform, I understand that because uniform means one form, and we don't allow any other religious indicia in our uniforms. But can you just put up for me an image of Sikh soldiers in their uniforms? Okay, this isn't bad, but can I get a historical one? Can you Google Sikh uniforms, British, 19th century or something like that, and just hit the image button? Because I'm talking about, that was a modern picture and you showed Sikhs, but I want to prove, and it's a painting more than anything. Here, I'll Google and I'll email it to you. Sikh soldier, Britain. And, okay, put it on up if you got it. That's exactly the one I meant. Now, that's obviously a painting, that's not a photograph. I'm going to guess that's from around the early 19th century. Those are legit, bona fide British military uniforms. That is not a different country. That is not a different, those are, and there's lots of beautiful pictures like this. Those are legit British uniforms. That is official kit, if I'm using the right phrase. Maybe I'm not. And why am I going on this little tangent about Sikhs in the military? Well, I'll tell you why. Because my friend reminded me of it when he was in Burma. He reminded me that the British Army is the most diverse army in the world. That's a fact. That's a fact. Now, the American Army is very racially diverse for reasons including there is some affirmative action, but it was a place that was radically egalitarian. They didn't allow, if you have a black commanding officer and you are a racist, you shut up. They don't allow, racism is really being drummed out of the hierarchy there. It was an egalitarian place, and economically it's a way out for people who grow up in a marginalized community with economic dysfunction. Join the Army. So I acknowledge that the U.S. Army is very integrated, and it's a path of success for many minorities. We all know that. And in Canada too, by the way, Mohawk Indians in particular, and other Indian bands have a tradition of joining the military, including Canadian Mohawks joining the U.S. Marines. But can you dispute my claim that the British Army is the most racially and ethnically diverse in the world? Perhaps since Roman times, and for the same reason that the Romans bestrode the earth and they took soldiers from every country they conquered. And why am I on this tangent? Because my point is this. Do not tell the British Army that they are racist or extreme or discriminatory. Those young lads that were greeting Tommy Robinson don't have a bigoted bone in their body. They fight with people of all races, and they fight for people of all races. And you don't need an anti-British pressure group like the Muslim Council of Britain to cast aspersions on them. It's the Muslim Council of Britain that's extreme and divisive. Would you not agree? And don't tell me the lily-white toffs at The Guardian and other snooty snobs looking down their noses as these working class British soldiers. Don't tell me that the editorial suite of The Guardian is more mixed race than the British Army. Don't tell me that, because I know it's not true. Whether it's a Gurkha or a Sikh, or yes, even Muslim soldiers, although I regret, and maybe you could find the Times article of this, Alex, that I regret that 3 times as many British Muslims signed up to fight with ISIS as signed up to fight in the British Army. If you find that headline, it's a Times story. There's other stories. Put it up on the screen so people know I'm speaking with authority on that. But the Sikhs and the British Army have centuries of partnership. The Sikhs are as much the British Army, and the Gurkhas are as much the British Army as those indigenous Brits that we showed you moments ago. Yeah, look at this. Hundreds more UK Muslims choose jihad than army. Scroll down a little bit. More than twice as many British Muslims have traveled to Syria and Iraq to wage jihad than have joined the British military over the past 3 years. The difference could be even greater after it was claimed last night that the number of Britons to have fought with the Islamic State, ISIS, and other extremist groups in the region was much higher than the 400 to 500 identified by police. One MP said that more than 1,500 British militants had joined the fight to create a caliphate, while a leading figure in the Muslim community put the figure at between 600 and 1,000. About 560 Muslims serve in the British Army. I'm sorry, as Ben Shapiro would say, or Gavin McInnes would say, or Greg Gutfeld would say, those are hate facts, but they're facts. But don't tell the British Army they're racist. The British Army has in its blood racial diversity, because that's what happens when you have an empire based on meritocracy. And by the way, don't make me read the poem Gunga Din at you. And I know Rudyard Kipling is regarded as a racist, but his deep respect, Rudyard Kipling, if I'm not mistaken, born in India, or maybe he was born in the UK and moved to India, was an Orientalist when that word was positive. He loved India. He wrote the Jungle Book, if you're wondering who I'm talking about. Who wrote the Jungle Book? That great story with those words like Baloo and Bagheera and Kaa and Mowgli. That's Rudyard Kipling. That's Rudyard Kipling, the greatest British chauvinist there ever was, who also wrote a poem called White Man's Burden, which is regarded as horrifically racist these days. But if you read it with understanding what he was talking about, he said it's Britain's burden to go and bring the rule of law and the Decalogue, which is what he called the 10 Commandments, to the world, and the rule of law and civilization and bureaucracy and democracy. What is the greatest gift the Brits gave India? I put it to you, democracy and rule of law. Compare India, the gift that Brits gave India. Compare India with China. Why is India the long bet, the long play? Because it has, despite its flaws and its corruption and its poverty, it has the rule of law, it has a democracy, it has independent courts, it has a civil service, it has the legacy of hundreds of years of Britain there. And of course there were some shortcomings in colonialism. Look in the Middle East. What country did better? Jordan, which was under British rule, or Syria, which was under the French? Look in Africa, where the French colonies were versus the Brits. And I'm not here to say that empire and colonialism was an unvarnished good. Of course there was good and bad. But I put it to you that the places that had the most exposure to British traditions of law and governance and the Magna Carta are the best former colonies today. Would you agree?